Radio Free Skaro!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Radio Free Skaro, episode number 872. I am Stephen in Edmonton.
Warren in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
Welcome to October. Everyone. Hope everyone's enjoying autumn in the northern hemisphere. Hope everyone's enjoying spring in the southern hemisphere. Hope everyone in the UK is finding enough scrap wood to burn for the upcoming winter, given that things are...
Delightful waft of pumpkin spice coming off those logs you're burning in your house.
Possibly, yeah. England's having a rough go of it for the new regime, and I don't mean King Charles in the UK. So all our hearts are going. Why am I laughing? But for poor Great Britain and their bold new direction with a certain prime minister whose name rhymes with distrust. You'd think that would just be the thing right there, just sort of like scary off it. But anyway,
I think they were forced to drop the word "great."
It's just Britain now. Is it just Britain?
It's just Britain.
Okay.
Yeah, the kingdom of Britain. And
it's just a sneer. It's just an English person sneering.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Well, I mean, the pound is worth almost as much as the U.S. dollar right now, which, I'm thinking, like, maybe it was a good time to go visit.
Well, yeah. Hey, everybody miserable? I'm here to spend some money.
I mean, it is England.
Only if you have U.S. dollars to convert to pounds. I mean, you still use Canadian
we're not doing
dollars,
great
Stephen.
either.
So.
No, that's true. Yeah.
We're just doing less bad against the U.S. dollar than like the euro or the pound.
Yeah.
Less bad, the Canadian motto.
Less bad. Although,
that's about it too.
A lot of the podcasts I edit actually are in the States, so they pay me in U.S. dollars, so it's going great for me right now. Thanks very much for asking. But I'm officially a
except for like, the hockey teams that you love that are based in Canada and have to pay in U.S. dollars.
That's true, but that's been the case for decades. So
oh yeah. They also have other methods in place to, hedge their currency fluctuations.
That's true. October is also official. We can confirm this. This is a Radio Free Skaro exclusive. You won't hear this on any other podcast, blog, or website or Twitter. We can confirm that Doctor Who will be airing this month.
Wow. Bold on our parts.
Massive, isn't it? Massive. Mm-hmm. It's going to be airing this month, most likely the 23rd of October. But yeah, officially, I mean, even the BBC has said it's airing in October. So like, way to let your guard down there, BBC. We found you out.
No takebacks.
No takebacks. You can't change it now. We found out when you're airing an episode of Doctor Who, even though you didn't want us to, but we did it. We saw through your system and we found it out. So yeah, we're about 3 weeks away from a new.
So you mean we guessed correctly, is what you're saying?
Well, no, actually, who was it now? Some BBC executive at a Liverpool BBC festival like 2 months ago said Doctor Who is airing in October. That's as near as even the official thing when they announced like Power of the Doctor they still said coming soon. They didn't even mention the month. Yeah. So we're still annoyed by that. Still annoyed by the lack. I mean, this is this is more not Doctor Who, more the BBC right now because they're celebrating their own centenary and you wouldn't necessarily know it right now because they haven't announced it themselves, and I feel like
maybe they're like, if we don't make too much noise, maybe they won't cut us to the bone.
That's honestly that could be sort of it,
Yeah, I hear 3 hold some water. I think.
Yeah, maybe, but anyway, on this episode, it's going to be a long episode probably because there's a 65-minute Miniscope on James Hawes Part 2 where we talk about the Christmas Invasion, New Earth, and School Reunion, the last 3 episodes, which he directed for Doctor Who way back in the space year of 2005 and 6. is when those
Wow.
came out. Yeah, those are that old now. That old.
But those seem closer than 2020.
No, not to me, actually. No, it seems a long way.
No, 2020 is in a different continuum, thanks to the pandemic.
The global pandemic.
That's a multiverse thing, right, Warren?
Yeah. Steven's favorite, the multiverse.
Multiverses. Just it's such an easy way out. Oh well, we did. No, it didn't. It didn't happen at all. It happened in the multiverse, universe 874. So therefore, you don't have to
all
worry.
That easy because you have to come up with all this nonsense.
I know that,
straight.
but you don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about ending it. I suppose this is my problem with everything in general, is that it's prequel city these days is the problem. And I hope Doctor Who doesn't become a prequel, which it kind of almost did with Eternal Children. Because it's you don't have to worry about an ending. You just have to get to where it's already established, where the thing that already came out began. So you can sort of kind of play around with it, but you don't have to worry about ending it satisfactorily because we don't have to because. See,
here's the thing.
Somebody's already done that job.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the thing. Everything is run by 4 corporations, and the people at the top are executive morons. So what'd you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
Nothing good.
No, prequels are a way, and I say this as someone who's watching 3 shows currently, and all of them are prequels. They are a way to have recognizable things that aren't a sequel to something that technically you don't need prior knowledge to understand, but you won't get any of the jokes or references unless you have seen the things which they are set after that. You know what I mean?
I have a slight defense of prequels.
All right.
Somehow. Okay. Less so with the 3 things you're watching, right. And/or House of the Dragon, Rings of Power.
Yeah.
Rings of Power is 1,000 years back. So yeah, there's a couple characters because they can do this with elves that are familiar to us, but it's almost a new show in a way, which is great.
Yeah, that's my favorite of the 3.
House of Dragon is at least 200 years back. So much as I'm kind of on it, it's at least 200 years ago. Andor is, 10 years, whatever it is, 10, 15 years.
No, 5.
5 years before
BBY.
Rogue One,
Yeah.
which is, so it's diminishing returns the less further back you go, basically.
I think you're right. about that. I'm infuriated with Andor. No spoilers or anything like that for those people who haven't seen it yet, but it's a show, as I was saying before we started recording here, it's a show that the aesthetic, it looks like it's made in 1976. It's right up my alley. It's straight down the plate. And I should love this show, but it is taking forever to tell the story. Forever. And
I can't argue with you on this one. Much as I'd like to, I can't.
It's driving me nuts. The episodes don't end. They just stop. 3 of the 4 episodes ended, and I literally swore at the screen because I think that's not an ending. You just stopped the scene, and then the episode's done. I'm just like, I'm so annoyed. But I can't turn away because it's there are so much that I like about it, but I don't know. I don't like binging, but like, this is the epitome of it's just a 10-hour movie and everything. And this is a 10-hour movie, and I don't know.
Part of the problem. Well, I mean, the whole problem is you. But
true. Good call.
Parts of the problem.
Thank you for this
are your nostalgia, because you've got your nostalgia for Star Wars, which is fed by Rogue One, because that leads into.
Oh no, I didn't like Rogue One at all.
I quite liked.
I didn't like Rogue One,
but it still feeds your nostalgia desires.
ATST. No, it doesn't.
And you're playing Spot the Doctor Who actor.
I'm a little bit. It's a good listen. Andor shot in the UK, and it's there's
at least 3 that we've talked about off air.
Yes, that are in Doctor Who at some point or another. I can't remember who the third one is. I know that the one person
there's the old dude.
Oh, from Aliens of London. Yeah, that guy.
From Aliens of London. There's Faye
Marseille, who was
Shona in Last Christmas.
Yeah, almost companion, and then
there's Doc Brown, who would you say his name? Real name Ben Bailey Smith or
something like that. Not Doc Brown from Back to the Future, of course. It's not Christopher Lloyd.
I know it was Doc Brown from Taskmaster.
Yeah, he looks familiar. And I thought, where is he from? He's from Saranga Conundrum. So once again, the Saranga, the star-making factory. That
it really is, weirdly enough.
Roy Kent in it. Roy Kent.
Well, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And then there's the episode 4 when I was watching it. There's like, this kid looks familiar, but he was the lead in The End of the Effing World. Which is
that's right.
Nothing to do with Doctor Who. It was a great little two series
It's a great one.
show on
It's
its
a
own.
great one season story. And then Netflix decided it is great. Make another season.
Okay, no, you're right.
Do you know what happens at the end of the episode? Because it's tough to. Okay, here we go.
And he was also, if I remember, he was in Black Mirror. Was he in the one in the webcam recording blackmail
I
one?
haven't seen all the Black Mirrors. I don't
I can't
remember.
remember which one he was in.
all
But
right.
he was in
I've seen
Black
most of the
Mirror as
first
well.
season, I think.
I never saw any of them. Apart from that awful
There's a few good ones in
but
there.
no, I'm just
There's a few good ones.
Yeah.
There's
Bandersnatch,
very
maybe
good
not
ones.
so much.
no, I didn't like Bandersnatch at all. It was dumb.
It's interesting, but I wouldn't say it's good.
Oddly enough, I can't find
who-
it anywhere on Netflix anymore. Like it never pops up. You know, Netflix likes to show me everything that they've ever produced, and like I thought, did they wipe it? Is it gone? Is it gone?
No, that's probably because Netflix tries to push crappy reality garbage on everybody now.
Yeah.
Here's MILF cakes or whatever the hell. I don't know. I just made that up.
It's
but
interesting,
majority did.
maybe I've mentioned this before when it comes to Netflix, but like whenever they say, oh, here's what the 10 most popular things on Netflix are. And then sometimes I'll just open up Netflix and it says, oh, look at the new show that we're featuring. And it's just like the thing that's plastered on the front page. And that's the one that people watch because people are just going, oh, okay. They're shoving it at my face. I will watch. People aren't seeking it out. They're just like showing it to you. And so they're basically
The number one show.
Yeah.
The number one show on Netflix for me is scrolling through the tiles and giving up. That's
That's
going. I like
it's my favorite. It is my favorite. I like to have
But I was going to say,
watched him.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done. Go for it.
I was going to say about Nandor that I'm here for the fan service. I'm not proud of this, but all the side stuff with Mon Mothma and all the stuff in Coruscant and the Imperial guys running Coruscant and some weird little drama they have about the bureaucracy, and that's the stuff I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting because I've never seen this before except in Star Wars books. This shouldn't be what I'm interested in, but it is.
Yeah, and it's like two scenes.
You're a Newt Gunray stan, aren't you?
Oh, amongst others, yes. Ben Quadraneros is my boy.
Newt Gunray. Anyway, that's Andor, which we have to watch while we wait for Doctor Who.
Well,
Apparently,
that's only one of those three that I'm even watching. So
Yeah, I know
that's the
you
only
bailed.
Conversation I can participate
yeah,
in.
you bailed on the Lord of the Rings one, and you never even started with the Game of Thrones because you don't like the Game of Thrones thing. So that's
No, Game of Thrones I stopped after season 2 and never watched the other 6, and so I not even bothering with House of Dragon.
You miss so
just so
many
we-
Doctor Who actors in the rest of the seasons. of
I
Game of
don't
Thrones.
care.
So many.
Exactly. Chris doesn't care. I don't care. Only you
It's
care.
a Bergerac of Doctor Who actors. That's the collective.
Again.
That's the collective of Doctor Who actors in other things. Is a Bergerac.
After it aired, I sat down and I watched the Red Wedding scene, and that was it
Oh.
for anything post season 2. So.
Right.
Now, just to point out that we're not all negative Nellies, I am loving the Rings of Power. So
It's great.
I'll just put that out there.
Yeah.
I don't hate everything, unlike a certain somebody. Although I think Steven actually likes Rings
No,
of Power.
I like
too.
it. Yeah, no, it's good because I started watching it and Erica wasn't sure if she was going to watch it, and then she's going to catch up, and then she caught up with the first 3 episodes before episode 4 came out. So now it's become a show that we watch together, and and I like it because she's read a lot of the stuff, and so like. This is the great stuff about prequels. Like, oh, they recognize the thing. You know, you could recognize things that are coming, and you recognize names and locations and everything, and so it's kind of cool having this sort of font of knowledge here. Of course,
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah,
It washes over me.
As I said before, the one failing of the Rings of Power is it is almost exclusively made with non-Doctor Who actors, and that is
Not a failing at all.
a crib. I'm looking forward to next
But
season when
you
they
saw-
shoot it in the UK, which means they might pull from the mass stock of Doctor Who actors, and I can recognize people in it again.
You should just create a Plex channel of your own that's called Pandervision,
Plex.
and all it is Doctor Who actors.
We
stuff.
should mention Plex. Plex.
Oh, yeah.
Plex.tv. I think, although I know someone on Twitter said that it wasn't in their area, but it's certainly in Canada, maybe North America.
I discovered it. Yeah.
Plex.tv. You don't even need a Plex account. It's just like one of those channels that they have on Plex. They have a lot of these little channels or movies, free stuff on there. Kind of like what we talked about the Samsung Plus for Samsung Smart TVs. There's a Doctor Who channel there that's sort of run by BritBox. It's the same except different on Plex. You could just tune in. You could watch Doctor Who. It was different. I compared. I turned on the Samsung TV Plus one, and they were showing something. I can't remember. Oh, Power of the Daleks, the animated version of Power of the Daleks in black and white as the Lord intended.
Yeah, and Seeds of Death for me.
And then it was on the Plex one, there was Seeds of Death. So there were different ones. So it reminded me of the olden days for people of a certain age and location that could pick up PBS stations from two different parts of the world, states, I guess. And there'd be two different Doctor Who things going on. Basically
Back when we got Spokane and Detroit.
Yeah. I didn't grow up in Detroit. I grew up in Kamloops, Alberta, Canada, and we only had PBS
I'm a WTVSist.
Yeah. So Plex.tv, have a look. They're just oddly though, they went from, because I left it on the whole day, because why not? It's Doctor Who. And they went from Seeds of Death through to War Games, obviously, skipping over the Space Pirates. And they skipped over Spirit from Space, oddly enough. They went right to Doctor Who and the Silurians. Yeah, which is
I wondered.
Oh, wow.
We've accomplished the dream. When I was a kid, I would be like, what if I could have at my beck and call and tried to get it on videotape, all not even classic Doctor Who at the time. And now I have it, and I mostly ignore it for like $7 or $8 a month or whatever BritBox is. And then I'm excited about this because Doctor Who's on. I'm like, but I've already got access to all this stuff. Why am I getting excited? But I am. So.
I know, because like I said, we crave being told what to do. we don't like choice. All this choice is like paralyzing us in what we want to watch, and just throw it on.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess we're watching the War Games right now. Fine.
Well, that's the problem. Is if you have all the DVDs, Blu-rays, whatever, then you actually have to frickin' pick one,
right?
That's hard.
It really is. There's too much choice.
First world problems and all that. So
there is too much choice in the world. We need to bring back.
This is a phrase we're going to regret a couple years from now when Trump Part 2 happens in 2024, and he eliminates that problem for us. Anyway,
but yesterday looking at that Plex thing and sitting there watching Part 6 of Seeds of Death, I'm like, I haven't watched the story in years. Maybe I should actually sit down and watch it properly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what.
I haven't. No.
It just shows up in the background. Maybe. You can have it being nice in the background. You can't really do that. You could do it with BritBox, but that, like you said, Chris, involves you choosing to do it. So if it just kind of comes on passively, that's like the old days of TV, which weren't so bad, youngsters.
I'm pretty sure it's going to
become that guy.
Pretty sure it's going to be lots of years before we get season 6 on Blu-ray. So
maybe.
It's going to be a while before I'm forced. Well, not forced, but before it's fed to me on a platter to watch.
Mm-hmm. Which is somehow a bad thing.
As we're recording this very second, there is the sword fight between the Doctor and the Master and the Sea Devils playing out before.
Yes. So. Shot on Laserdisc. Not really shot.
No Laserdisc. No video disc.
Later.
So that segues to a nice couple. The BBC Archive YouTube channel and Twitter feed are one of my favorites because they show old archive stuff from the glory days of the BBC. And one of them that they brought out this past week was behind the scenes from 1974 of making of Match of the Day, which is the football association football game that they used to air on Saturdays, I think it was. And it would happen during the day, and they would basically record it and edit it together and play that night, I think it is. And an hour long. So they basically cut down. It was honestly the best way to watch a soccer game, let's face it, cutting out all the boring bits. But what the great thing is, you don't have to be a soccer fan to appreciate this. There's all sorts of archive equipment, but also you get to see good shots of the control room of BBC Television Centre, the actual studio, and the thing that clinched it for me was the videotape department. Mm-hmm. Because at BBC Television Centre, there was 8 studios there, and all of them, I think, fed down into one videotape department where everything was recorded. So, whenever you see, videotape editors on Doctor Who were seldom credited back in those days because literally you're just pressing play and record. There's no real creative decisions going on. It was very much an engineer kind of position. And then seeing all that, you think this is the exact room where things were recorded on for Doctor Who. And it's 1974, looking at some of those big, massive 2-inch tapes thinking, what used to be on there? What just got bulk erased?
Robot.
20 minutes.
Robot was on there.
20 minutes before that. Is that? Oh, did you just wipe Fury from the Deep to record this episode of Match of the Day?
You've sussed out the scene of the crime.
Yeah. So that was, and of course, so much cigarette smoke and guys with pipes and,
Yeah,
you know,
as I told Stephen about another one, a training film. There's so much hairspray and tobacco smoke smell in there, it would kill a man.
It's amazing. Anyway, links to the show notes to watch that one. Also, another one, Jason Davis, noted Harlan Ellison scholar, Jason Davis tweeted at us on Twitter. This other BBC training film from 1968, hosted by head of drama Sean Sutton. He helped cast John Pertwee as Doctor Who. A year after this was made, from 1968. It chronicles basically it's an instruction film on TV production. There is so much gold in this for people who want to understand how they made Doctor Who and anything in the BBC back in the days, because they had they were covering the production of an episode of Z Cars, as directed by Christopher Barry, young Christopher Barry, still with no hair at all. I don't think that man ever had hair in his life. He's directing that.
My brother.
Your brother. And there's great shots of the control room. There's he runs down basically, here's what the grid looks like, and here's what these lines on the BBC like planning grid. So when you look in your special PDF materials of the floor plan for the studio and stuff, like, it basically gives you a glossary of what all these little lines and stuff mean. But the piece de resistance that we were like, you know, open mouth amazed at was the action dolly scale model of BBC television, of the actual studio, with like little models of cameras, perfect replicas of
hardcore pornography. That's what that was.
He was moving around about planning scenes and like little miniatures of all the sets, and like, oh, what happened to that model? Because that would be amazing.
I'm sure it was tossed in the trash minutes later.
Maybe it was. I don't know. Oh, that's a tragedy right there. And I mean, you know,
yep.
Sure, wiping
the worst wiping ever.
Wiping videotapes is one thing, but anyway, the video. I mentioned that because in the match of the day, we saw a bit of the video disc player, which was used to do some like reverse shots on videotape in Doctor Who throughout the 1970s. And it was mostly used for sports. So, but they use it for Doctor Who sometimes. So anyway, archive stuff. All right, this is what we talk about now on Radio Free Skaro, folks, because while we wait for new Doctor Who to show up, we have to talk about stuff from 50 years ago or longer.
Or new stuff we don't like.
Yeah. Press screening, though. Apparently there's a press screening on in October 11th for The Power of the Doctor. So stuff finally, folks, is beginning to happen. Remember 2 weeks ago when after the Queen's funeral on September 19th, and I reasoned that, they're probably just holding a bunch of stuff back, and a trailer would surely be coming out. Yeah, 2 weeks since. No trailer at all. So, slow burn. Things are moving along in Doctor Who promotions like they are in the plot line for Andor.
Burn might be optimistic.
Yeah.
Slow simmer.
Yeah. Let's talk about David Tennant. How about he played Doctor Who and is going to do so again. He was on Graham Norton last night as we're recording this on Saturday morning. He was on the Graham Norton show with Jamie Lee Curtis and other people.
Lydia West,
Eric Idle, and Robbie Williams. And I thought that this quote, that's where it came from, but no, it didn't. He just told the BBC. David Tennant told the BBC that him coming back to Doctor Who, and let's face it, RTD coming back to Doctor Who, and Catherine Tate, basically came out from the Doctor Who tweet-alongs during the early days of the COVID-19 global pandemic. So,
worth it. Pandemic, totally worth it, apparently.
I know. Emily Cook has saved Doctor Who by arranging these things, because it caused them to go, oh, wasn't that fun? We should just make it again. And they said, maybe it's just a one-off. And then it just sort of went quiet, thinking, it's not a bad idea. Let's do that. And so they did. So you think, see, this is the thing. We complain about Twitter sometimes. I met my wife on Twitter,
all the time. And
Doctor Who, Russell T Davies and all this started because of tweet-alongs on Twitter. So it can be for good as well. Just
until Elon Musk owns it.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
Whether he likes it or not.
Yeah, very true. So anyway, interesting stuff. that Twitter helped get the band back together, so to speak. So, so there, and Graham Norton's back for another season too, I guess too, because I forget he does like seasons worth of shows. You know, Chris used to be a bit of a devotee to Graham Norton's show, didn't you? Is that still on the cards or no?
I would watch it from time to time.
Okay.
Still do.
Whenever there's a Doctor Who actor on there. It's the only other BBC show that BBC America airs, so it's notable for that, I suppose. So at least BBC America's got another thing to put on their schedules that isn't endless Star Trek: The Next Generation reruns. But anyway. And with that, let's
Is Killing Eve not BBC as well?
Yeah, but it's done now.
Isn't it BBC America?
It's over. Yeah, it's BBC America, yeah. But it's over now. So,
Okay.
yeah. New, I'm talking about. Like Doctor Who, apparently, airing on October 23rd, as evidenced by the endless stream of to be announced that's happening on October 23rd for the standard Doctor Who marathon leading up to it. Anyway, let's step back in time for this extra long episode of Radio Free Skaro, where we go through the Timelash, looking through, as if we haven't done enough already, looking back through the history of Doctor Who. This week from October 2nd to 8th in history in Doctor Who. Happy birthday, Ian McNeice, who played Winston Churchill in several episodes of Doctor Who in the Stephen Moffat era, and ruined Just a Minute at Gallifrey 1, thus killing it, stone dead, never to return.
How did you ruin it? I don't remember.
Oh,
this.
he's just being obstreperous on the panel, as I recall.
All right.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
I remember that because I was scorekeeper.
Did lack of food make him obstreperous?
That's where I learned that word. I don't even know the meaning of it, but that's where I learned it too, from members of the Daleks. William Hartnell hurt his back shooting episode 2 or 3 of Dalek 3, I think.
Seems a common complaint
of Dalek Invasion of Earth. The extra carrying him down the ramp when they rescue him at the beginning of episode 3 tripped and fell or something and dropped him, and he hurt his back, and he had to basically take next week off. So he shows up as Edmund Warwick briefly from behind and faints and is out of the episode. I can't imagine the tongue lashing that extra got from William Hartnell after having dropped him on the floor.
Youch.
That could have been.
That would have hurt more in his back, probably.
Yeah. Probably the first actor to die. No, actually, there's a sad story about that with the Dalek Invasion of Earth, because the person who plays one of the two people who live in the hut in the woods in the Dalek Invasion of Earth. I don't know if you remember it that much.
No.
By the time you see her on screen, the actor has sadly died. She died in a car accident or something after recording that, but before it was broadcast, which is quite sad. Quite sad indeed. So we're off to a rollicking start here.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, you bet. Oh well, that's where we're at these days. October 3rd is a quiet day in history for the most part. Not a lot of stuff happening. Adrian Hill died. We're going dark. Let's go dark. Adrian Hill, who played Katarina, died in 1997, which seems very young for an actor. They're starting to shoot Underworld, though. Underworld's happening, Chris.
Have people gone on strike yet? Have they gone, oh God, it's all going to be on green cloth yet?
Beautiful blue screen.
Adrian Hill is apparently 60, so
very young.
Not super young, but I mean not super old either.
Yeah. So that was rather sad. They started shooting Underworld on BBC Television Centre in October 3rd, 1977, in front of blue screen. Listen, that's how they shoot a bunch of TV today. And here they thought, well, we had money at the beginning of the season, and now it's gone thanks to inflation, because apparently Liz Truss was Prime Minister back in 1977 as well. And they said, well, we could either cancel the show or we make it on model sets and shoot everything on blue screen. And they chose the latter, and it doesn't look great, and I love it because of it.
I have to give you credit, Stephen, because I just didn't care about Underworld. I was just kind of, whatever, this is not any good. But then you told me about all that,
right?
And I realized, oh yeah, okay. Now I watch it with just that in mind. I barely even need the sound. I just want to see all the model shot stuff.
It's great. It's, the model, the actual stuff shot on film is amazing. It's amazingly well done. For the,
and I'm in it for the story, like the Greek myth parable, and just the whole notion of the Time Lords being so just full of pride and trying to share the regeneration thing with other species and all that kind of stuff. And I wonder if Chibnall, not that he's ever going to have the chance, probably, I wonder how he'd correlate the Timeless Children stuff with the Time Lords giving the gift of regeneration to others.
Chris, are you proposing that there's going to be explicit Underworld references in The Power of the Doctor?
We better see a P7E, damn it.
Oh, yes.
Stephen, I'm going to say 4 letters to you.
Right.
A-T-S-T.
That would be, I want references to Underworld. I think there...
Exactly.
There
needs, it's okay when Doctor Who does it, not when anybody else does, 100%. Apparently.
Oh, it's funny. I'm just now, tonight as we record this, I'm watching The Sunmakers Part 4 as part of my umpteenth pilgrimage through Doctor Who, one episode a day. So tonight, Sunday, October 2nd, I'm starting watching Underworld. I can't wait. I love it to bits. You will never find a Doctor Who podcast that loves and or appreciates Underworld more than
for varying reasons.
Doctor Who colon Radio for Skaro.
That's probably true.
Yeah, I don't.
Or Nightmare of Eden, for that matter.
Or Nightmare of Eden.
What about the Undercast? Come on.
What now? The Undercast? What?
The Undercast. I just made up in my head.
Oh, I see.
Podcast explicitly about Underworld.
It's just like a minute-to-minute watching of Underworld. That would be great, I think, actually.
We'll get a collaboration going with Bill Evenson and do like 1 minute of Underworld.
That's not bit, like the Frankenstein podcast. Yeah. Maybe next gap year we should do that. Maybe after Power of the Doctor airs and we know that Doctor isn't coming back for like another 18 months or something like that. We should just do
next lockdown when we're all stuck at home.
Yeah,
it'll be
again.
Yeah.
It'll be a reverse Patreon special. We'll pay people to listen.
We will literally
well played, Chris.
cut
Well
you
played
checks
indeed.
and send them in the physical mail. $1.
People are listening going, this is not a bad idea. Let's get these idiots to do this.
Yeah, and it'll be on an audio cassette too, oddly enough.
So, sir, why are you declaring bankruptcy? Well, I did promise everybody I'd make an Underworld podcast. A what? A what? What?
A minute,
what are you talking
minute
about?
by minute
You're an idiot. Get out of my
Underworld
office.
podcast.
Including you mean the band? No, the Doctor Who story.
Doctor Who story from 1978. That was entering production in early October 1977.
I'm going to stop you right there. This is a bank. Get out.
Yeah. This is.
Oh, let's go to the Yoda Savings and Loan.
Thank you for the reference.
ATSD.
October 3rd, a much busier day. Recording for. Happy birthday, Adrian Hill. She joined the regular cast for recording of Dalek's Master Plan at Ealing Film Studios.
October 4th?
Yes,
4th.
Yeah.
Because she died 30.
She joined the cast the day after she died.
It's Doctor Who, man.
Wow, this is getting very confusing.
Oddly enough, she joined the cast the day she died because her very first scene, because this is pre-filming for Master Plan, while episode 4 of Mythmakers is being rehearsed. So Adrian Hill, the very first thing she shoots for Doctor Who is her leaving Doctor Who, which is her death scene.
You pulled your butt out of a sling on that one.
I did.
I tell you.
And so, all the filming stuff happens, which is astounding to think about, given that they shot all the film stuff for Master Plan before they shot anything in the studio. So by the time you see episode 12, those lucky few who watched it for its one and only broadcast in 1966, when you see that, any film footage has been shot literally like 3 months before that. So. And they shot it on October 4th, 1965. The rock and roll years.
80 to 83 leap out at me as notable.
Oh, why that one? What's 80
Because Warriors Gate and all the on-set tensions and whatnot with Paul Joyce and Graham Harper and all that. That's interesting. And Warriors Gate in and of itself is more interesting than it is good, as far as I'm concerned. Nicholas Courtney being contracted for the 5 Doctors, a triumph. And then my favorite, Colin Baker getting an option for 3 more years. Didn't quite work out.
Yeah, so in order, a little more detail. 1980, recording for Warriors Gate takes place at BBC TV Studio 1. Production assistant Graham Harper has largely taken over as director now due to Paul Joyce's exhaustion and on-set tensions.
Yep.
Wow. Love it. I mean, Graham Harper told us, I think, way back in 2010, basically how he more or less had to draw up because I don't think Paul Joyce had a studio plan. I think he was just going to go in and just say, I'm just going to shoot it and stuff. You kind of need to plan this a little bit. It's how we do TV. And so he kind of drew it up. And so, yeah. Oh, it's great. It's great. Warriors Gate is a certain... I know you don't like it, Warren. But
no, like I said, it's more interesting than it is good.
Yeah.
Just like Underworld.
Yeah, just like that, yeah.
For me personally.
Yeah. Nicholas Courtney contracted for the 5 Doctors on October 4th, 1982. Thus guaranteeing his appearance in that. And yes, as you say, October 4th, 1983.
Laugh.
Contracted for his first full season, of course. He's already been contracted for Twin Dilemma. And even on the basis of that, it says, this looks like a good enough show to be a part of for 3 more years. Let's do it. And so he does it. And of course...
4 more years.
4 more years.
Yeah, it didn't quite work.
4 more years. 4 more years.
That's really sad, actually. I'm curious what the contract.
Oh, Colin.
Yeah, I know. Because they gave him a contract for season 22 with an option for 3 additional years. So obviously
and he got paid for 2 of those. So
he certainly got paid. Yeah, he got paid twice for season 23. When you think about it,
the one that got made and the one that didn't.
Yeah.
That's the best thing that can happen as an actor.
I'm just wondering if...
actually, well, I mean, I don't know how much of this is him being humble or whatever, but I know he's said in the past that, he would have preferred to have been paid for work he had done.
Well, yeah.
But still. I'm just wondering, like, if he had an option for 3 additional years, like, was that an option that, like, each year they could pick it up and stuff? And, and then, because I'm just thinking if they had to, like, draw up a new contract for... when it came back, I don't know, legalese and stuff like that. But I'm intrigued by it. And
then beyond that, 1986, Mind Warp episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got the first appearance of Brian Blessed, who could have been the 2nd Doctor.
Oh, I don't think he was...
Which Doctor was he in contention for?
Oh, I don't know. In contention for might have just been... it would be great?
Quote.
Yeah, probably Peter Day. I don't know.
I thought he was further along the process than, like, just, wishful thinking.
I don't know. I don't know how far each one was along the... I mean, because they had, like, people who were auditioning for the 7th Doctor, but we know that they were like Graham Crowley. He played General Nadine in Body Only and Return of the Jedi.
Oh, wow.
Was one of the 3 people who we saw, but
second Doctor was
it second?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Well, he appeared here. He's great. He's absolutely great in I, Claudius, by the way. Brian Blessed.
Can you imagine his shoutiness in the 2nd Doctor?
I don't know if
that'd be Colin Baker 10 years earlier.
I don't know if he was there yet.
I guess
though.
20 years earlier.
I don't know if he was there yet though, as a shouty actor.
He's good at shouting. Unlike Al Pacino, he's much better at shouting.
Agreed.
According to the article in The Guardian, it went as far as him being offered the role.
Wow.
So, not just wishful thinking. And then 1989, everyone's favorite and the least divisive episode of Doctor Who ever, Ghost Light episode 1 hit BBC One.
Wow.
You all heard my thoughts. I don't need to repeat
them. What a day in history. Wow. October 4th. Man, isn't it the same day that Sputnik launched too? Like this is quite the thing.
2004.
Yeah.
Little
CanCon remit.
The BBC announces October 4th, 2004, that the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, that being the CBC folks, has invested in the revival of Doctor Who. I don't know.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Once again, the world, you're welcome that someone from the CBC, Sidney Newman first, and now the CBC, helped chip in money for Doctor Who.
We paid for it. we're allowed to leak it early.
And then just kind of gave up on it. Surprise,
Yep.
surprise. The Canadian way. Hey, here's some money. It's a...
Yeah, someone needs a big sit-down interview with Slokyo Kim Kyu, his name I'm probably just misremembering there. The controller. I can't think of what the Canadian equivalent of the head of the CBC at the time. He had great confidence in Doctor Who, and wanted to bring. And so this is why it aired 10 days after it aired in the UK, and there was like promos everywhere and specially shot intros with Eccleston and later Billy Piper for it and stuff. Like, it was a thing. And then he left after like 2005, as executives are wont to do, and the next person came and it's just, what is this? Get rid of it. Of course, this is it's not to bring hockey into this, but this is October 4th, 2004. So normally the NHL season would begin, and CBC airs a lot of hockey, and Hockey Night in Canada is a big thing. But of course, the lockout that year, which would later wipe out the entire season, CBC's probably seeing the writing on the wall, thinking, we need something to fill. We got money to spend and time to fill. What about Doctor Who? Let's do it. So they did. So there. One of the great things about the NHL lockout is it brought Doctor Who.
New hockey would get in here somewhere.
Doctor Who to the world. Yeah. Let's move on, because this episode's going to be long enough. What's happening October 5th? October 5th.
Victor Pemberton finally writing for Doctor Who.
Yeah, commissioned to write Fury from the Deep on October 5th, 1967. I think off the back of script editing Tomb of the Cybermen, which they had made a few weeks before that. Because that was sort of his one-off thing. Hey, how would you like script editing? It's all right. Rather write. Okay, how would you write a Doctor Who episode? Fine. So he does.
It's quite the drama you've concocted there.
That's honestly, I think Big Finish should do that. And I'm just thinking off the top of my head. They should do, like an Adventure in Space and Times and making up how I think Big Finish should just do random dramatizations of the making of certain Doctor Who stories. And
do not put that out there. They will do it.
They might do it. And that Victor Penman, that's just like, how would you like to watch? Sure. There you go. Wrote your script for you there.
What gripping audio drama that would be.
Sure. Anything else on October 5th jump out at you, chaps?
Sure.
Yeah, what do you got?
Debut of Warren's favorite, Paradise Towers.
What a time!
1987.
What a time in history! Wow.
Richard Briers not overacting in any way, shape, or form.
No, not at all.
I'd like to point out 1983 as chronicled and celebrated in It's a Sin. Recording for Resurrection of the Daleks.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if that was the actual scene they
takes
shot.
place.
Yeah.
Ish. Yeah. Sort of.
On that day.
We talked about Remembrance of the Daleks a little bit ago. Episode 1 went out in 1988.
It goes out about a month later than they
October
wanted
5th.
to. Yeah, because the Summer Olympics were in Seoul in late September, early October. Pushed Doctor Who to start their season later than they wanted to.
And legitimately a McCoy story that, Warren, you do love.
Excellent. Love is a strong
Yes.
word.
No, it's good.
Yeah?
It feels like proper Doctor Who and not pretentious nonsense.
Right.
So yeah, or camp idiocy.
That's true. I just didn't think you loved it. I just thought, he's pretty good, I guess. Remembers the Daleks. But, I don't know.
I quite like. Let's put it.
There
that
we
way.
go. I think I'm probably in the same
That'll
camp.
work.
Yeah.
That'll work. Mm-hmm. That'll do, pig.
That's from that movie, right? Is it Babe?
Is it Babe?
Babe, yes.
Yeah, it's Babe.
Babe Pig in the City is a misunderstood masterpiece.
You've said this in the past.
And I've been right every time I've said it.
October
6th.
6th, 1964, Terry Nation is commissioned to write an Untitled Dalek storyline. I have to think that's got to be The Chase. Which, yep. Dalek's Master Plan continues to be shot on film. Film inserts for that at BBC in Ealing. That's pretty cool, I guess.
Got a photo call for a K9 as a new companion.
Wow.
So, didn't happen only for the humans.
No, that's true.
Could you just move over there, Kenan? Be a love. Come on.
Also,
come on.
didn't happen, some people might think that the timeline's thinking, oh wow, it's kind of like what's that Buck Rogers robot, bitty. Tweaky was like basically R2D2 ripoff and everything, and probably some people look at K9 and go, oh, we're just doing R2D2, but Star Wars, even though it had opened up in the States and North America, it was about 2 months away from being broadcast shown in theaters in the UK. So it was completely coincidental that Doctor Who had a metal adorable droid that rolls around on wheels when another adorable metal droid which rolls along on wheels was a thing. So
do you happen to have any grand conspiracy theories between K9 and Moffat from Battlestar?
One's a monkey and one isn't.
The other one's K9. No, I don't. Do you? You asked?
No, I don't. I'm just curious if you do.
No, I don't. But I like your idea, though. Did they shoot Battlestar They shot that in L.A., though, didn't they? I mean, this was in a...
I think they did, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't even know when K9 era Doctor Who started airing in the States. So, no, I don't think so. But I am not... my mind is not closed to this conspiracy. Let's put it that way.
Well, by the time we get to this next year, maybe I'll ask that again.
Okay, give it a shot. Let's see what else is happening.
1982.
82, with the blessing of William Hartnell's widow, Heather, Richard Herndl is contracted to play the first Doctor in the Five Doctors.
Eater of sandwiches, Richard Herndl.
Yes, very. He's a great sandwich eater. Remember that outtake of William Hartnell eating a sandwich? Well, Herndl has studied that clip, and he's ready to play the first Doctor in Doctor Who. I wonder who was he was taller than William Hartnell, but I'm wondering if he was as tall as David Bradley is. And
I wonder.
Yeah,
who is the better first Doctor of the two? Let's say.
Yeah, I know. Also, this is rather sad. 1986, at the invitation of the controller of programs for BBC One, Michael Grade, Sidney Newman submits a proposal to revamp Doctor Who. No further action is taken after a meeting between Newman and head of drama Jonathan Powell goes badly. Yeah.
Here's my conspiracy theory. Right. How about Michael Grade going, let's really torpedo this thing. Bring this guy in and ruin it.
Well, I mean, from what Graham Burke says, because he wrote a book about Sidney Newman, head of drama. No, I know that. But it almost feels like, he's been pestering us. Let's just bring him in, have a meeting, just to kind of placate him and says, just go away. You're done. Please stop bothering us. We're just going to stick with the same team. All right, there you go. That's what's going to happen. We're getting close to the firing of Colin Baker, by the way, in the Timelash, so that'll be an interesting time when we get to it.
Why am I filled with tension over something that happened almost 40 years ago?
I know.
If not 40 years
it's a prequel. That's why, Warren. This is a prequel. The Timelash is a prequel. That's why.
We've become what we beheld.
Yep. Just because we're literally going to be pushing the 2-hour mark of this podcast, I'm pushing along here. 1994. I just want to mention that Robert De Laurentiis submits a revised storyline for the Doctor Who TV movie called Doctor Who? ? So
is he related to Dino De Laurentiis?
I have to think that he must be, right?
I have no idea.
This is October 7th as well.
October 7th, 1994. Yeah. In the heady days leading up to the Doctor Who TV movie, as written by Matthew Jacobs, of course. So that was a notable thing that happened on that. Of course, we hasten to add that 2018, October 7th, debut broadcast of Winterfell Earth, Jodie Whittaker's first episode of Doctor Who, airs on October. That's only how many years ago now? 4 years. Wow. Seems like she's barely been here and she's already gone. Well, such is Doctor Who.
Doesn't seem fair.
No. Let's close out then on October the 9th because this damn episode is
October 8th?
October 8th, rather. I see
before we jump off the 7th,
right.
John Flanagan, Andrew McCulloch for Project Zeta Sigma. Have we talked about Project Zeta Sigma before?
No, talk about Project Zeta. The original was going to be the first story of Peter Davison's era's Doctor Who.
I don't know enough about it.
Oh, so. Really? Oh, that's what it was. It was they commissioned it and it fell through, and so while they hastily found a replacement for that, which became Castrovalva, they shot Ford of Doomsday first. And I think at some point they must have told Peter Davison, or maybe John Nathan Turner told the press and the fans that said, "Oh no, we're just shooting Ford of Doomsday first so that Davison can get his feet wet and get comfortable with the role before we shoot his very first story, which eventually would be shot fourth." No, there was no script. That's why they didn't shoot his first story first.
See, I mean that story about shooting in the order that they did is so ingrained that I didn't realize it was BS.
That's why. Yep.
That's the story of Doctor Who in a nutshell.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. Look at that. Yeah, we're learning stuff here. Look at this.
We are learning stuff. Just like in 2004, Bruno Langley announced as Adam Mitchell. Like, oh man.
Dear. Why do you do this? Why?
Because I can.
I know it's a gag at this point.
You do know that Bruno
Because
Langley has had a shady... Just Google what Bruno Langley... It's bad. Anyway, we don't talk about him anymore. So we end on October 8th, which is... I don't know, a bunch of stuff happened. Just scrolling through.
Let's go with 1974. Start there.
Retroactive approval is given for Robert Holmes to rewrite the Ark in Space. Welcome to your new script editing gig, Robert Holmes. You have to rewrite an entire story because the John Lucarotti one, the initial version of Ark in Space, wasn't working, and so he had to completely rewrite the damn thing in his first day as a script editor. So it's because of that. A lot of people see how great Genesis of the Daleks is compared to other Terra Nation Dalek stories and think, oh, obviously Robert Holmes wrote a lot of that. He didn't, because he was busy rewriting the Ark in Space from page one. And so Genesis of the Daleks is mostly a Terra Nation joint, and it's really, really good. And I don't know how it happened either. So...
Nope. Because they forced him to make something new for once, and he did.
Yeah, you know, they just, they held his feet. No, stop it. As Terrence Stick said, this is, I think you've sold this story to us like on multiple occasions. And I think you've tried to do it again.
Great scam, but come on, it's over now.
Yeah. So there, let's wrap it up there because, as I said, this episode is epic. We have a Miniscope to get to, and we haven't even got close to it. So we'll just burn, and no offense, Big Finishers, are going to burn through some of the releases, which I'm sure have sort of been building up over the course of the period of mourning for the Queen Elizabeth II. But Doctor Who Hidden Depths, where the Ninth Doctor meets the Sea Devils, get this, in space. What?
Whee!
Yep. In a story written by Elizabeth Miles, our friend, called The Seas of Titan, but it's part of Hidden Depths, a package that's coming out in November. That's next month now, officially. Also coming out in November is Seventh Doctor Adventures, Sullivan and Cross, AWOL. There's a colon in there, and there's a hyphen in there with the Seventh Doctor and Harry Sullivan together at last. So that's cool. That's a set of two stories coming out in November as well. Also in November, boy, I hope you're saving up money for November, Big Finish fans, because Unit Nemesis, Objective, Earth is coming out then as well. Double colons with a story written by Andrew Smith as well as in there, because Andrew Smith is a great guy. He writes for Doctor Who and Big Finish. He also is script editor for Star Cops. Star Cops returns in Audio Farm, The High Frontier, Part 1, also in November, with, of course, the original cast of Star Cops. So Andrew Smith doesn't write these. He's the script editor. He's the Chris Boucher of Star Cops.
But a little less Sensorite, like.
A little bit, yeah. And a couple things that are out now. Warrior meets his destiny with Colin Baker as the Warrior, basically the War Doctor, different version of the War Doctor, because you can do that.
A multiverse. This is basically a multiverse.
It is a multiverse. It is the curse of the multiverse. Multicurse is out. And then if you wanted Doctor Who Unbound, the 8 different stories that came out over the years between 2003 2008, but wanted them in one collection, now you can, because it's all available in one giant collection, including, Jeffrey Baildon, the late Jeffrey Baildon, and the late David Warner, and a whole host of other people who played Doctor Who in these, including that hack actor Derek Jacobi was in it.
You will never not do that.
He would never be seen in Doctor Who again, so we were lucky to get him then. But yeah, all 8 stories are available now. from Big Finish in one collection. So, all right, that is it. We apologize for the length of this episode, folks. We really do. We don't at all. But here, we're only halfway done because now it's time to talk about Doctor Who director James Hawes in the Miniscope.
Could be a theme park from the future. Or we might be inside a Miniscope.
Oh, shut up.
A Miniscope, yes, of course, why not?
Yep, it's the Miniscope, folks. It's our second half of the James Hawes Miniscope. Not James Strong, James Hawes. We might have been confused on the first part of our podcast Miniscope by thinking it was James Hawes who was potentially coming back to direct in the RTD era. No, it was James Strong.
RTD2, yeah. We've often in the past gotten James Hawes and James Strong confused, mostly because like one directed stuff and then the other one like directed the next block, and yeah, they're confusing. Well, not quite the next, because Strong did like. Yeah. Strong did like Impossible Planet and Satan Pit and other stuff, but they directed in the early RTD era.
I've never confused or indeed mispronounced anything to do with this television program.
Not one thing. Warren has gotten everything note perfect.
Which I have the high ground.
Yeah,
which is kind of a perfect lead in to our first story to talk about today, the Christmas Invasion, which refers to the lovely producer Phil Collision.
Collision,
as the French say.
Yeah, Crispy, you became on our text channel. You got pretty in depth into a one-off spelling mistake of his name.
Collision pill.
Yeah.
We're sitting there watching the Christmas Invasion last night, and I wasn't paying attention to the credits on the screen because. Well, I mean, how many times have I watched the Christmas Invasion, right?
Right.
And
8 times.
Cat after the credits go by, Cat's like, I'm pretty sure that said Phil Collision. I'm like, no, of course it didn't.
Which would be a great name, by the way.
How many times have we watched the Christmas Invasion? And how many times has it ever said Phil Collision? Never. So of course, rewind. Watch it again. Yeah, sure enough, it says Phil Collision.
Still there. Still, like, I'm amazed that it was never corrected for, like, DVD release.
Exactly, because I'm like, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, okay, so this survives, production, press screening, broadcast, DVD, Blu-ray.
Yeah,
I'm going to see if streaming.
Everything.
I'm going to check BritBox right now. Keep going, and I'll check BritBox.
Well, it's not on BritBox, so good luck. Good luck with that. But it'll be on.
Sorry, I mean Crave.
Crave. Okay, yeah. So Warren's going to check that then. This highly hip thing.
See what I mean? I never get anything wrong.
I know.
So I try to do a little bit of digging after the fact, and I find precisely 3 things on the internet that make mention of Phil Collision. One of which is IMDb, which just says credited as Phil Collision. One is tvmaze.com, where it says also known as Phil Collision. And then of all things, on the BBC website, an interview with Graham Harper, where he apparently calls him Phil Collision, which might be nothing more than a typo from whoever transcribed the interview onto the website.
Pretty much. Listen, every time I was trying to type his name, we'll get to James Hawes eventually. Bear with us, folks.
Autocorrect, right?
Important.
Autocorrect is like, no, not Phil Collins. Why does Apple think that it's Phil Collins, the drummer from Genesis and host of A Life of Rock, with Brian Pern? It's not. It's Phil Collinson, and I have to make absolutely sure that I typed Phil Collins. So I'm not surprised. Maybe there was a spell check in 2005 when they were making the credits for this or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, yes, James Hawes directed, of course. Last week we talked about The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances, and then he goes on to direct the first 3 episodes in production for season 2 for David Tennant's debut. The interesting thing is that he was probably only supposed to direct 2, but because, and we'll get to it, because School Reunion had to sort of be bumped up to the summer before school set in because they shot on location in a school, and they had to shoot obviously in the summer months when school was not in. That sort of got added to the block. So that, along with other things, apparently really messed up a lot of production aspects of this whole 3-episode block. Because I watched these 3 episodes with commentaries on, and James Hawes is on the Christmas Invasion commentary. But the overriding theme for all of these is that we were massively behind schedule, and everyone was going like, we thought we had learned during the first season that how to do this, but apparently not. So yeah, so that's interesting.
Breaking Crave news. It is produced by Phil Collinson.
Collinson.
It is corrected for broadcast, presumably, but because these are probably the broadcast things from space. But I guess space got it right.
So
I watched from the Blu-ray.
Yeah, I watched on the Blu-ray too.
Yeah, I'm looking at Crave. I have it frozen right in front of me, and it says produced by Phil Collinson, Collinson.
And we're talking Christmas Invasion here, right? Like there's like the doctor's on the
Christmas
ground.
Invasion right in front of me.
Yeah, right there.
Rose is sitting on the bed with the doctor in bed. Jackie's right there.
Yeah, Jackie and Rose are sitting there, and Rose has the stethoscope in her ears. That's what's in front of us.
Breaking news, this name any other Doctor Who podcast that would devote this much time and attention to this sort of thing.
But we did.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Wow. Anyway, Christmas Invasion. Remember those heady days when Doctor Who was on Christmas Day? This was the first one. First one they ever did. And it began a string that only ended when Chris Chibnall took over. And they said, let's not do these things anymore. No one watches on Christmas Day. Who wants that anymore? All this free publicity. Anyway, the first one. I don't know. How do you want to do this? Who wants to go first? Anyone want to go to first about their overall thoughts about the direction? We're going to try and focus mostly on the direction of James Hawes on the Christmas Invasion.
I can go first.
Go for it, Warren.
Basically, and we'll see more of this in later episodes we're going to talk about, and in previous ones we talked about, but there is not a lot of camera movement. It seems like they kind of had, like, there's a lot of close-ups in the first half, which makes, when they go past the close-ups, into like all the sort of wide shots and everything, that makes that more effective. I don't know if that's calculated or if it's just what you got to shoot, but it is, I hate to say shot in a standard way, but it kind of is just kind of shot in a standard way, which made me think, how much money did they have for this particular episode? Because maybe they had to put up something that, it's worthy of Christmas, but it feels pretty cheap and unambitious isn't the word, but conservatively shot, I guess.
I hesitate to use the word pedestrian, but that's the word that kept me in mind.
And you know what, though? I don't think it's James Hawes that is that way. I think
it's... I think it's with what you were talking about a moment ago, Stephen. I think it's just a case of, as much as anything, maybe just needing to play it safe just to get the shot in the can and move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think TV was just so different back. Like Erica, as I was just sort of waiting for this recording to happen, she was watching an episode of like Paper Girls, was the name of the show, on Prime. Now canceled, by the way. You can't watch. Well, you can watch the one season they made, but it's now been canceled. But like, just I don't think that was an overly expensive show. But it is shot. It and every other television show in 2022 is shot way differently than what TV was, not just Doctor Who was back in the day. I watched because we went on a road trip this past summer. It was great. We went through Deadwood, South Dakota. We thought, you know what, maybe I should give Deadwood another try. I only watched the odd episode when I was working at Super Channel or Movie Central, whichever station aired it.
Is that the one with Ian McShane?
It's one with Ian McShane and Timothy Oliphant and all that. It was set and at the time I thought, well, I don't know what Al Swearingen is doing. I think the actor who is playing the woman bandit, I can't think of her name right now, was ludicrous, and everything just seemed claustrophobic. And then we watched an episode after we got back from vacation, and I thought, all those criticisms are still true for me 20 years after the fact. Like, this is what, early 2000s, I think it was.
Something like that, yeah.
So, like, just into, like, the widescreen era, and it was like, everything was so close up. Everything felt so claustrophobic.
They were feeling around, right? And if you're hiring, not James Hawes specifically, but if you're hiring people who are, like, who have a track record in TV, they're probably used to that at the time, right? That they're just kind of going with what they know. And so, and also it wouldn't surprise me if at the time, if you didn't shoot like that, if you got ambitious, you probably got struck down for it, by some executive who didn't know any better, who'd been around for 50 years.
Yeah.
Again, none of that has anything to do with this particularly, but the climate at the time.
I know, but like I remarked about this last episode, whenever this comes out, about how nowadays I think there's a lot more confidence in the camera work and in being able to hold on a static shot for longer. There's a lot of cutting back and forth, shot, reverse shot sort of thing going on. A lot of this. There's not a lot of two shots in a way. It's kind of pedestrian, as you were saying, Chris. I think Doctor Who right now at this point is sort of made in the edit suite still, I think. And now I'm becoming more intrigued in how modern Doctor Who is made, because by the time Rachel Talalay comes into the show, she is pretty much given like carte blanche in a way, like saying, you are you are an auteur. This is your show. Direct it. She's involved in the editing all the way to the very end. And I think James Hawes is probably there too. But when you listen to the commentary, you just sort of realize like they're just getting these shots in the can. They just got to get in the can. Like it's basically classic Doctor Who at this point, and that they are running out of time already, even though they just started shooting, and they just need to get these shots in the can. And for I think it was New Earth actually. Had two simultaneous units shooting at the same time in the same studio at the Q2 studio Newport. Like there was one shooting over on this side of the warehouse and another one shooting over at this side of the warehouse. And, it's at this point in TV, it just seems like there's just directors are accumulating footage in order to put something together that we will chop together at a later date. That's kind of my overall impression for these whole 3 episodes.
Less so with School Reunion, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's and I'm wondering because I'm sure I'm not disparaging James Hawes at all. He's gone on to direct a lot of stuff. He's directed like the entire second season, I think, of Slow Horses, for instance. He's directed episodes of Black Mirror. I think the TV industry is just different now than it was then, and I'm wondering if. Because, that second season, Phil Collinson, a.k.a. Phil Collision, and RTD, obviously asked Elizabeth Sladen if she wanted to come back. But who else did they approach was Graham Harper, because, maybe they thought, okay, we have like directors who are, good at getting the shots in, but maybe we need that sort of auteur vision that we know Graham Harper has. And so like they were reaching out perhaps for a more personality behind the camera at the time. Anyway, overall,
that was also when Stephen Fry was first supposed to be involved with the show. That
too, yeah. I think they're still kind of in their tentative phase at this point. It's quite there's other elements that are getting there, like the new orchestral arrangement of the Doctor Who theme tune. Some of the model shots are interesting.
Middle Eight makes its first appearance in Christmas Invasion.
In Christmas Invasion, and the orchestra's playing in there, and it's these miniscopes make us look back at things that we often don't think about at the time, but with a lot of hindsight, it really shows us what's going on. But
was this the first? And this is not really a Hawes thing. The first montage of TV stuff, because there's a lot of that in this, which makes sense given the subject they've got, this Christmas Invasion. But it reminded me of how RTD loves to do that.
Aliens of London, I think.
For news stuff, I would say Aliens of London would have had montages of news.
Yeah, literally the first thing they shot way back when. But yeah. Anybody have notes? I know we all take notes for these things now because we're dedicated podcasters like that. But
I've got a few. Yeah.
Okay, what do you got there, Chris? As talking points?
One of them was in the scene where the Doctor first exhales some regenergy, as we like to call it in these parts. There's a nice little I called it a hurry up and wait shot, where the camera does like a really quick pan around his head and then just stops dead for really no good reason other than to let the regeneration energy breath get exhaled.
Remember when that was the thing? Warren, you've mentioned that in the past in this podcast about how there are a lot of like really quick movements and then slow motion sort of thing. Like that was a technique that was sort of
Yeah,
there
that was
for
a
a while.
thing back then. Even in Lord of the Rings, that's a thing. Like where they screw out the shutter speed, and it always bugs me. It never works on anything I've ever seen, including Lord of the Rings, which is a phenomenal set of movies. But when they do it in Lord of the Rings, I'm like, no, dude, we don't need that.
I know, but when was that made? Early 2000s, you know? Like,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's probably why this isn't TV stuff, too.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think there's a more prominent shot in Empty Child Doctor Dances that uses the exact same. There's this weird frame rate thing where they just a really quick push in on the child, and they go, oh wow, yeah, this is 2005, all right.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's definitely got that glow, as all three of these things do.
Yeah.
I'm just watching the meter here as our Stephen and I were getting a thunderstorm here, so watching the thunder show up on the recording meter.
I know.
Here.
Me too. So if there's an edit, it's because the power went out, everybody. I noticed actually a couple good things where maybe it doesn't quite work as well, because the TARDIS in the CG model shots, speaking of early days of TV or early CG, is quite fascinating, about how the TARDIS is really spinning really quickly in the CG shots, and then they cut to a kind of a slow bottom of the TARDIS sort of going over Mickey and Jackie's head there in the pre-credit sequence. But, it helps sell that, okay, there's an actual physical prop there. And they do the same thing.
That and when it bounces against the cladding on the building.
Yeah.
And at the time, we were all pretty impressed,
Oh,
let's be honest here.
yeah. And then the Christmas tree as well. Like, they actually have a... an actual physical prop spinning during good chunks of it. And that helps sell it, too. Yeah.
I said chair versus tree is both cheeseball and kind of impressive all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had a note about just putting a camera between the rows of branches on the killer Christmas tree.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you don't do that, that's the travesty. Like,
right?
You can't have the spinning Christmas tree and not stick a camera in there and have a Christmas tree POV shot.
Yeah, because otherwise it just feels like there's a CG tree spinning off in this wide shot, And I've also found it fascinating that in the commentary, James Hawes is sort of saying, like, we had to lock the camera off and do, for anything, like for motion capture, for instance, like the crowd shots, they basically had to use the same extras.
Oh, yeah.
Two or three
and it
different.
kind of shows a bit, too.
It does, but the fact that they still, in those days, still had to actually physically lock the camera off. Nowadays, there's like motion tracking. You can sort of have the camera move around a little bit after the fact. They're still in like locking off camera days. And I think this is very 1978. We have to lock the camera off and do a whole
stream. It looked way worse, though.
I mean, they were still doing that, at least through Shakespeare Code, when they were filling the globe.
Yeah.
So you're trying to tell me they had the same people in Rome and Paris and London?
Quite possibly, yes. And indeed, about 3 times, I think there's an aerial shot or a shot from the roof where there's a bunch of people on the ground, and James Hawes was saying, we didn't even have time to like change like costumes. So like there's the same guy with like the navy blue house coat on there like 3 times
the thing
over.
Is, though,
I'd believe that.
Yeah.
It is effective, though. Like all the walking people, it does work,
Mm-hmm. It does. It's just interesting that, because of time and space, they didn't have the time to make them different and everything. But yeah. Also of note, speaking of just how, the show was made back in those days, so much is on location. Like they sort of had a temporary studio in Newport for the first part before they moved to Rothlock. I don't remember when they moved to Rothlock for. It might have been the Moffat years, or it might have been earlier. Don't at me. I'm sure I'll look it up. There's a whole Doctor Who magazine about this, but it actually affects what they do sometimes. Like for the second time, because they were supposed to do a big sort of camera track out in the Doctor Dances out from like Captain Jack in his chair drinking a martini all the way out into the TARDIS, but they didn't have the room for it. And similarly, at the end of this episode, the Christmas Invasion, they're supposed to do a big motion control rig push into the TARDIS when the Doctor emerges from the TARDIS for the first time in the episode, but they couldn't get that equipment into Clearwell Caves where they were shooting on location.
It's still a great shot. It's cheesy as hell, but it's still kind of great.
You kind of, you need that for that big hero moment. But it could have been like even bigger and stuff. But the fact that they're on location all the time means that they have to amend things and not actually use the equipment they want to. And as we'll get to later on, add stuff on that perhaps they would with like CG that maybe they wouldn't do if they were shooting in a studio.
As Warren says, it's still effective. It still works. I like how, as the camera goes in, the people move out of the way.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah,
it makes me think of like a musical or something like that, or some like 1930s film or something a little more epic.
Busby Berkeley.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I had that one in my notes, and you talk about things with the use of CG where maybe CG wouldn't otherwise have been used. Mm-hmm. And the reason we bring this up, and I hadn't planned on talking about this, but in New Earth, before we started recording, I was complaining about the excess use of CG in New Earth. But even in Christmas Invasion, there's a shot at one point for the whole blood control thing where there's a shot from more or less Jackie's flat down into the courtyard, and you see the TARDIS there. And a bunch of people and whatnot, and the TARDIS is so very clearly just CG'd in,
right?
And I don't know if that's because they just didn't have a physical prop to put in there, or what the basis was, but it just didn't look so great.
Well, hey, they were using CG TARDIS replacements for the Jodie Whittaker reveal video like 12 years after that. So, keeping in tradition, I suppose. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it looked a little better there.
That's the thing. I mean, all back in the day, all credit to Will Cohen and the Mill, because they, with what they had to work with at the time, they did some amazing work. But especially now, going back to it nearly 20 years later, the seams are ripping apart a bit.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Like when Sycorax guy falls off of down into London, that's a bit dodgy. Although it's not quite Eldrad dying dodgy, but it's pretty dodgy.
Or when the Cat Nun falls down the shaft in New Earth, as we'll get to possibly. But yeah, same thing.
Yes, that's actually equally egregious.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw another point or two out there from my list just to clear some of those out of the list. For speaking of the news broadcasts that Warren brought up earlier, I liked the camera being zoomed in on the screen, so you get all like the fuzzy and the pixelation and kind of stuff, rather than just like cutting to a camera shooting people at the news desk.
Right.
It just gave it a look.
It made it look like everyone is watching it, as opposed to here are some news studios around the world. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. The the first Sycorax broadcast where they actually speak. In my notes, I put they see a little silhouette of a man.
100%.
Because they're blocked like the Bohemian Rhapsody diamonds thing for Queen.
Right. It is. Yeah.
So that's.
Sorry. It was a conscious homage. It was a conscious homage to the video.
Was that brought up in the commentary?
I think it was. Yeah. I think it was. Yeah.
One thing I noticed as a journal. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to ask, did you have time to watch the Confidentials as well?
I did not have time to watch the Confidentials. No, sorry. No.
Sorry,
Warren, what do you got?
Oh, no. I was just going to say, when my journalist ears perked up when one of the anchors says, "This is a rock solid proof that aliens exist." I'm like, no, it's not. How the hell can you possibly say that? You should be fired for what you just said on TV.
I love shorthand when it comes to explaining stuff with the media on TV shows like that.
That's some RTD shorthand, all right.
A little bit. I thought there was a really it's interesting actually listening to the commentary, which featured Julie Gardner, Phil Collins, and Russell the Davies, and how like it's going. They recorded it before it even aired. So like, back in the heady days when they recorded DVD commentaries, like basically when they were still making them. and how Russell T Davies was saying that he didn't like the Santa costumes at all. Hated them, like on the actual commentary.
I didn't like the sort of like grid line thing.
That's
on the
exactly
mask.
what he had the problem with too.
Okay.
Yeah. Phil Collins, and look at that. I'm just looking at my notes, and it auto-corrected to Phil Collins. Phil Collins and didn't like the one shot, which actually I thought was pretty cool, of the Sycorax ship over London, because he thought the scale was all wrong, because they cut to other shots and it's basically the ship is like, right over it. It looks like that's where it actually is, but if you cut to the overhead shot, it looks like it's like 30 miles above London right there, and he had a problem with that. I thought that was a very that whole sequence was great. The music was excellent. I liked how
Did he, just to expand on that one, did he have any problem, like when the beams formed and fired on the ship at the end? Did he have any problem with how far away the ship was? 'Cause them's was some powerful beams.
Them's about no,
They certainly were.
Never mentioned that. No.
Okay.
The scene though, that's where I thought was pretty great, because there's Rose and she's sort of breaking down. Oh, he's left me, Mom. He's left me. She's like crying and all this and stuff. And then she like sort of like, Jackie comforts her and stuff. And then in behind them, the glass shatters. That's not a separate shot at all. They didn't cut away to the glass shattering. They actually had this emotional acting scene and then blew out glass behind them. And I thought that is incredibly daring and risky, because one of those two things will go wrong. The acting won't quite hit, or or they'll get it right at the acting, but the glass will blow up, and you'll have to do one of those
You
again.
have to reset. Yeah.
Right?
Or they'll anticipate the glass while they're acting, which is nobody's fault. 'Cause
Yeah.
how could you not?
Adric and the keyboard anymore.
Yeah,
At the
basically.
keyboard, essentially.
Because
So
you have to tell
yeah.
them it's going to happen. I mean,
I know, kudos to everyone involved, because that was a very effective scene, because he didn't expect it. You didn't expect this massive shattering of glass happening right in behind them. Usually I would think, they clearly would just cut away to an actual shot of glass breaking, but no, it was right there.
On a related tangent, the last point I had in my notes was kudos for having things like the glass shattering with the sonic wave when the ship hit the atmosphere. Like,
Yeah.
good, verisimilitude or whatever word you want to use. Like, cool. I like that.
The shots of the gherkin, or the glass breaking off the gherkin.
I think that was just a hey, look what we can do kind of thing. But yes,
totally.
Yeah. Yeah. What else did I have here? I'm just going to go through my notes as talking points too, if need be. There's a lot of other stuff that we kind of more or less mentioned. The last one is that they had to do a pickup. When the Doctor comes in after having put on his new costume in that great scene where he's in the wardrobe. When he comes in and he's wearing his new outfit, and then Rose is at the table and turns and smiles at him, and he smiles back. That was shot like much later, because they realized in editing they didn't have, they needed that sort of establishment of, the Doctor's in his new outfit and Rose recognizes him in the new outfit, and that's kind of and they just didn't have it. Again, this is what happens with TV. Sometimes you don't know what you have until you're in the editing suite.
And film
too. So whenever they say, reshoots, everything must be going terribly. No, it's just you know what? Sometimes you don't think of things. Sometimes you remove a scene and you
miss
need
it on the day because you lose light or
you
something.
lose
There's
light.
any number of different reasons.
So many
Yeah.
different reasons to have these pickups. And,
Somebody was sick that day, so you need to sub in later.
And
my only other thought is that, and this is completely tangential to the whole Enterprise, is that whenever Harriet Jones kept saying, "Get me Torchwood," I couldn't help but hear, "Where are the Welsh sex police?" And I realized it's actually the Canary Wharf sex police. Actually,
Yeah,
Yeah.
with Mrs. Purchase. Yeah.
Tracy Ann Oberman's sex
I can
police.
tell you what they're up to. Yeah, they're up to no good. That's what they're up to, Prime Minister.
Yeah.
To continue on your point, Stephen, just looking at production blocks and things like that, the Children in Need continuity piece that bridges Parting of the Ways and Christmas Invasion was shot in Block 3 after 9 other Series 2 episodes had been shot, including the finale.
So Billy Piper's gone officially.
Yeah, and then they go back and shoot the bridge 7-minute thing.
Right.
Which is, that's just, I mean, you're right. That's just how TV works. So it's not a surprise, but it just seems weird.
It does.
That's how 2 works barely. That's how it works.
You would sort of think like, dude, does anyone know what they're doing when it comes to these
No,
things? But
absolutely not. As William Golden once said, nobody knows anything.
nobody does know anything. It's amazing. This is why I love television. It fascinates me more than it entertains me of how they actually make this stupid thing. And yeah,
It's amazing. It's amazing it works. It's amazing there's a product for people to consume.
it should fail a lot more than it does. Yeah, it really should. Well, let's move on to New Earth. How about which, of course, kicked off several months after. I think April 15th is when it premiered. To 8.6 million viewers, as I'm looking at here, but we're not doing stats. 85% appreciation index, just because these are important. Only 85.
Stats, though,
only 85. Yeah, New Earth. Some people have sort of thought, oh, this is a bit jokey and silly. It's a body swap episode, which in retrospect, it's like we've barely seen the new Doctor in
Body
the
swap zombie episode.
zombie episode. We've barely seen the new Doctor in the Christmas Invasion by design. And now we have the first full episode of the new Doctor, and large chunks of it, well, I should say that actually. There's a good chunk of it where he is inhabited by Cassandra in another form. In many ways, New Earth is kind of like Time on the Ronnie. There's
A little bit. I hadn't thought of that. But
Yeah.
you say it, I can't think it.
I've got one that'll one up that later.
Okay. I'm intrigued to hear what it says, but
Well, I've already told you guys anyway. But.
okay. Yeah, this was another one that was affected by production delays. Prosthetics was for the cats, which were great, but they were causing a lot of delays, which means they had to, like, the scenes in the pre-credit sequence, essentially, of the Doctor and Rose taking off and hopping into the TARDIS and going off. That was shot like in Cardiff much later. There was also shoot that in London, apparently, but that had to get pushed back. So Billie Piper's hair was like a different length, which is why she's wearing a hat during that sequence. Is like all sorts of crazy stuff that's going on there. But yeah, New Earth, a new era of Doctor Who. There's like orchestral music going on, just like there was in the
new era.
New era.
Murray Gold's music is doing a lot of work here, and excellent work. Like, there's all great. There's a lot of stuff that kind of carries on throughout the whole series of Tennant stuff.
Yeah.
From this one, or more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to know what else is doing a lot of heavy lifting, especially in the first couple of scenes? ADR.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, you shoot
So
on the
much heavy lifting.
You shoot on the windiest day.
I know. You can see how windy it is with the hair blowing around.
Really windy.
It is. Oh my god, I feel so bad for them having to be in that ADR studio for so much of that.
Yeah. Phil Collinson, speaking of being unhappy about things, very late in the day, he looked at that shot of the hospital out there and says, I think there should be more buildings around it. Can you add more buildings, like literally within like weeks of transmission?
Somebody at the mill just like contemplating suicide. Like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. One of my first notes is all of Doctor Who shot at the Millennium Center in these days, because the whole of the hospital lobby is the Millennium Center. And having been there, okay. Warren,
yes.
These are my friends. When you do that thing, I remember when you took a picture of that from Sound of Drums.
Yes.
Well, you could also see it in the background. It's a staircase of in the hospital. So, yeah, Doctor Who's on location so much.
I haven't a clue if it's the same spot or not, because I haven't bothered to look it up or anything, but there's a bit where there's a bunch of like more rustic stairwells and whatnot that made me think of the Auton bit under the London Eye, that I had wondered if it was the same.
In Rose, yeah.
In Rose.
That might have been. I know that they shot the elements of like where Cassandra's secret lair was in the basement of a house, where they also shot a couple of other rooms for, was it in the same story or was it in a different story? Like they use so many locations. That's amazing to think. Like maybe they should have locked down a studio of some sort to shoot Doctor Who in, because
wasn't their mandate though? Like, we're in Wales, let's Wales it up here.
Well,
like,
but
so maybe that was part of their deal.
I don't know.
To go around and shoot a bunch of different places in Wales.
Well, it was never Wales. That's the thing. It was always New Earth or London or
No, but I mean, like they had to use as much as they could of being in Wales.
I don't know.
That was a relatively new policy at the time, I think.
Oh, maybe.
Just looking at Wikipedia, the location for the pods containing the human specimens was a disused paper mill previously used as the base of the nesting consciousness.
There you are.
So, yeah.
Wow. Look at that.
Which
Interesting.
means they didn't do as good a job dressing it up as something else as they might have been
Well,
able to do.
it's tough to do when, especially the size. I mean, it serves the purpose to have all the pods there, which is pretty giant. That's all done in the mill with them just sort of duplicating one row of pods.
And it didn't look bad.
It did look pretty good actually.
With a whole bunch of CG doors.
Yeah, you were upset about the CG doors apparently, Chris. Please,
just upset about all the CG in general.
No.
This thing.
There is a lot of CG. I'll give you that.
Yeah, because there's the one for the elevator. You mean when they sort of let's go down to the elevator to the basement?
Bajillion instances.
Yeah, it's
cat nuns and
there's that one shot of that door though because they're basically on location and there was no door. There was no lift or anything like that. They didn't want to build one because that would seem silly because they would have no room because it's literally a brick wall behind them. So what do? They stand in front of a green screen and they CG in a door. And that's how you make Doctor Who back in 2005.
But in terms of practical effects, and I know they built this for End of the World, that face of Bo that they built is kind of. You look at it, you're like, and the Doctor's like pressed against the glass. You're like, they actually built this giant stupid thing. Like, wow, that is kind of insane.
Well, it was on display at the exhibition, wasn't it?
I know. Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I think so.
But it's still like that's a big crazy prop that they built.
It is. They added some more animatronics to the mouth since the first time it was seen in the End of the World. That's what they said in the commentary. So it did look a little bit. I mean, still like when he says later on, it's just sort of the mouth going up and down. It doesn't look that.
The voice is doing a lot of work there, but that's a great voice.
It is a little bit, yeah. But yeah,
I'd also forgotten that Adjoa Ando played one of the cat nuns.
Later to be Martha's mom, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Just like Freema Agyeman plays, Martha's cousin in the finale.
Freema Agyeman was almost in Christmas Invasion, but they thought, you know what, it's a small role. We're gonna remember your name maybe for a bigger role later on, and that role is the last episode of series 2.
Yeah, which is not much of a role.
And then of course she comes back as a companion. Anyway, Warren, you were saying.
Oh, I was just going to say that the camera barely moves in this, even more, or even less so, I guess. But one thing I got to give this one credit for is like when you haven't got that and you've got all this other stuff to work with, you've got performances left over. And I think Billie Piper does a phenomenal job.
She's
much
great.
better than David Tennant. She is really good at playing Cassandra. And David Tennant is not quite as good at that. Like he's a little more camp than she is. She gets it, kind of just nails it,
I took some minor exception to when Cassandra inhabited the Doctor's body, saying like, "Ooh, now I'm a man." Well, Cassandra was born a boy, so how big of a leap could it be?
Well, I mean, it's been a while. It's been a while, probably. How much of it? Well, I'll tell you what, Chris, it's a bit of a difference being a boy than a man. I'm just saying.
All right, I'm not treading these waters, but I also like. I do think it does jump around with a bunch of different tones, and it does a pretty good job of that. Even at the end, where it veers into like melancholy and sentimentality, I thought they nailed that for what it was. Like,
and it's most. I thought like, oh, maybe this is directing, but it's James Hawes. I think I heard him say somewhere. Maybe it was this one that he did the commentary for, and not. Yes, it was this one. He didn't do Christmas Invasion. It was this one, and he sort of like. I think Julie Garter was kind of like playing pseudo moderator, and sort of like, how much rehearsal did you have for this? And like most of it wasn't rehearsal. It was mostly discussions of what was going to happen in the scene. And you sort of trust the actors to A, learn their lines, and B, to basically give the performance, which is astounding. And so like it wasn't, I think mostly what Hawes is sort of doing, like let's keep it, not to go too much over the top, as you might have alluded to, Warren. Maybe you didn't quite do it with David Tennant there, but
to be fair, Billie Piper had years of the show under her belt, and Tennant didn't. So maybe he's kind of not quite used to the role.
Could be. Yeah, could be. Billie Piper's sort of looking to spread the wings a little bit, and so had this sort of this very. She's great. She's just great in this episode.
She's funnier than hell as Cassandra. Yeah. As is Cassandra herself, right? So.
How does it speak? It's Cockney. It's just travel up the apples and pears. Yeah, it's pretty good. I have a few random notes, but nothing too substantial. Mostly sort of covering off on other stuff, like the shot of the poor woman getting infected by one of the zombies coming out of an elevator took like half a day to shoot. They thought they would get it done like in an hour. Half a day for a quick shot because they had to lock off the camera for this poor woman so that they could CG on like the disease infecting her later on. Early days of CG, still had to lock off cameras. Anyway,
and when they're still learning what's actually involved in the time.
Oh, I know. Actually, you know what? There's a mildly funny story to that because on the commentary, it's Julie Gardner, Will Cohen, and James Hawes, and there's a bit towards the end where Julie Gardner is trying to get Will Cohen in plain language to explain what 2D animation is and what 3D animation is. It's like this is where we are in the history of TV. What is 3D animation?
The worst person to answer that is the animator.
Yes,
exactly,
because they know too much.
Yeah.
It's like a friend of mine tried to get me to explain vidfire without getting technical. I'm like, well, I can't. Like that's just not how vidfire works.
Yeah. Anyway, Chris, did you have any notes at all for this one?
Not a heck of a lot, but a little bit. All I really had was like, especially with the hospital lobby, there were a few nice high shots that looked nice.
Mm-hmm. Probably from a staircase. It probably wasn't a crane. They only got a crane in for one day, probably for a empty child doctor dances. But I bet you they're probably just up on an upper balcony or something like that.
Oh, probably, yeah.
Yeah.
For the ladder shots, it actually looked like they used ladders as opposed to, Batman 66 movie when they're, climbing sideways.
I mean, they used a ladder, but I think there wasn't much room to work with. I think James Hawes actually commented about, I hated this scene because he had a hell of a time shooting in an elevator shaft that was basically about 12 feet high because the ladder basically ends essentially right below where the camera sees. And so trying to shoot people climbing up after them was like just hell.
Well, yeah, they probably had to like digitally composite like a repeating ladder sort of thing.
Yeah, similar to that, yeah.
And then I'd forgotten all about this because it has been so many years. But so in 2005, we nostalgically remember in Canada our great fortune of having Doctor Who air on the CBC 10 days after the BBC because of the NHL strike or lockout. Mm-hmm. I'm just looking at Wikipedia. You had said April 15th for the first broadcast on the BBC. Here in Canada, October 9th.
Yeah.
6 months of lag time between BBC and CBC broadcast.
Well, I don't think
Pirate Bay got a workout back then, let me tell you.
Yet the CBC still put money into it. Still got the, thank you credit at the end of the episodes.
Yeah.
But 6 months in between.
I don't know what the delay was
time.
between that and Sci-Fi, which is where Sci-Fi, it was airing on Sci-Fi in the US at the time. Was it at that time? I think they started airing it.
I think so.
It would have been, but Sci-Fi also, well, for series 1.
Yeah.
Canada got the DVDs earlier. The US was going to get the DVDs at the same time. Mm-hmm. Sci-Fi hadn't yet started airing it. And then they picked it up. And so the DVDs for the US got delayed. So that Sci-Fi had a chance to broadcast it and not have competition from the DVDs. But apparently, speaking of DVDs, I don't know if this is worldwide or just the US or whatever, but apparently, for those who subscribed to Netflix and got the complete Series 2 DVDs from Netflix, yes, children, Netflix once gave out DVDs through the mail.
That's a myth, like unicorns.
For New Earth, there was an error in the pressing of the DVDs where at the 32-minute mark, playback switched abruptly to a scene from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning.
Wow.
I can just imagine all this whimsical Murray Gold music and all of a sudden, 1973, naturally lit, 16 mil garbage.
On the Wikipedia entry, it doesn't say how long these were in circulation, but Netflix pulled the discs when it was discovered and there's apparently only Netflix discs that were so affected.
I'm almost impressed.
What a time! This is what life was like, kids, when Doctor Who was being made when it first came back. This is the world that it inhabited, man. Anyone else have any final thoughts on New Earth before we press on to School Reunion?
Yeah, I'm gonna drop that bomb.
Okay, do it.
So at the end of New Earth, we see Cassandra in Chip's body getting taken back to that party that we saw the 16 millimeter or whatever film footage of earlier on in the episode.
Right.
So that Cassandra can, feel good about herself again. So basically Richard Curtis ripped off the ending of Vincent the Doctor from New Earth.
I suppose. I don't know about that. I don't know.
That's it. He did. That's it.
No, okay. All right. Well,
it's decided. It's decided.
You're a good TV detective.
It's been confirmed. Hawes regretted the small number of extras in that restaurant scene. He wished he would have had more extras. And now I look at it.
I still love that scene. I mean,
it's a great
I'm
scene.
Just a old softy, but I love it.
Yeah, it's not much of a party. There's like 8 people in the restaurant. To be fair, like I do feel like there should be more people in there. But
character-wise, given that's the last time she was called beautiful, maybe she's less popular now than she was back in. Exactly.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I'm convinced that scene exists only so that Zoe Wanamaker could be herself on camera.
Yeah, well, there was a whole scene in between that and like basically the shot where they have Chip and then they go there. There was a scene on the cliff top that they had to not use because they lost it because of a camera fault, apparently. So, like, once again, we're throwing it back to, like, 1978 when, like, the film jammed, so we lost that scene, or the negative was scratched, or some nonsense like that. Yeah, this stuff was still happening in 2005. So, hilarious. So I think they kind of had to sort of amend that scene a little bit to basically include dialogue that had happened in that scene that they lost. Man, television was just a complete crapshoot.
I mean, is it any worse for it? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
They had to go through some grief, but as a viewer, I didn't care.
No, I don't care either.
Has anyone ever, or have you ever read about the story about Toy Story 2, Stephen?
No, I've not, no.
Oh, I have heard about this. But
where...
Did James Hawes direct it, or is that...
No, that's a complete aside where all the footage of Toy Story 2 got deleted.
Did it really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. There's
boy.
I don't know if she was working from home or just happened to have had it, but there's some Pixar employee who had a backup copy of most of the work at home.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that saved the movie.
Wow, I don't think I knew
Wasn't
that.
that thing with Lord of the Rings too? They had to put like footage on iPods because that was the biggest hard drives they could find or something. I can't remember
I don't know
the
about
exact
that,
story, but they had like iPods with big hard drives.
They might have been the most
like
cost-effective or readily available portable hard drives
People
at the time.
forget how I was talking to a friend of mine who was going on about, those movies must have cost $300 million each. I'm like, no, they were independent films. Like, Peter Jackson had no track record whatsoever at the time. Like, these were a total crapshoot. He was a low-budget
horror director.
Yeah, like he was the Frighteners and like a bunch of horror stuff. And I think, what was the one with Kate Winslet, kind of her debut?
Frightener.
I
know.
No, Beautiful Creatures.
Beautiful
Frighteners
Creatures.
is one afterwards. Yeah. But that was it. Like, people think because of all the other stuff he's done and these movies that he was always that guy. And that's not the case at all. Like each of those movies is $100 million, which isn't a lot when you think about what you got.
Nope.
Even at the time.
Yeah. Well, speaking of iconic stuff from the 2000s, Anthony Stewart Head is in Doctor Who for School Reunion.
How dare you?
Of course, famous from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is hilarious. David Tennant was on the commentary for School Reunion. This is just me, this is my Miniscope in the commentaries. But at one point during production, he asked, because, they were completely behind schedule by this point in this first production block. And Tennant's going to Head and asking, how on earth did you make 22 episodes of Buffy a year in the time that it makes like 13 for Doctor Who? Because we're a week in and we're already 3 weeks behind schedule. Such was TV in those days. But yes,
they probably wrote like most shows. They probably wrote a lot of stuff where there's a bunch of people not in a given episode because they're off shooting something else.
Yeah,
or it's all in the school.
Hence, Dr. Light stuff starting in series 2.
Exactly. Standing sets also help. Doctor Who never get to have standing sets. They're always on location.
Buffy definitely had that.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier that they had to move this one forward because of set availability. Even then, they arranged to shoot the post-school destruction scene on the site of some another building, but apparently that got demolished in between them agreeing to shoot there and them going to shoot there. So, utter chaos. I find the final episode, the final shot, in that garden is much more effective anyway. So perhaps it was a bit of a blessing in disguise. But Warren, I'll ask you first. What do you have any notes? Do you have any thoughts?
I don't have any notes because I just watched it an hour ago, basically. So.
Any opening salvos?
But there is way more camera movement here. I mean, I'll go with the thing we're all thinking of, which is the Doctor's reveal, which is just
superb,
great, and at the time, totally new from what we had ever seen before. Like just panning over to Tennant in the background. That's perfect. Like it's so well. Good. It still works. A lot of this still works.
Oh, it's so good. I know the big tracking, and I love that because you first see obviously David Tennant there, and he's all like giddy and stuff like that, and then you can tell that. Just by his stance, by everything that he's there. I just love that tracking shot around, and sure enough, and then you could just tell that they both know what's going on. Oh,
yeah, that's conveyed perfectly.
One of the great scenes in all of Modern Who, right there, is that first TARDIS look, and then the meeting between the Doctor and Sarah.
And on top of all that, just when that all happens, when Sarah opens the door and the TARDIS is showing a lot, like everything is just like low and askew, and it just there's this, because she's all, as the character, she's going to be all like all WTF and confused and whatever, and just the way it's shown and shot is it just echoes that feeling that the character has.
Yeah, there are a few of those little, like, sort of Dutch angle shots in those school scenes, actually, when they're walking around, sort of just to try and get across a feeling of unease of being wandering around a school at night.
Well, the other one that comes to mind for me is sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just gonna say, you mentioned the school at night, especially. We talked last time about Hawes and all the night stuff for Empty Child Doctor Dances. There's a lot of night stuff here as well, both exterior and interior.
Yeah, avoiding drunk revelers apparently for some of those location shots. Like I think when David Tennant's saying, you can spend your whole life with me, but I can't spend your whole life with you. I think that scene is basically there's a bunch of drunk guys walking home from the pub at that point. So off camera somewhere. So good on.
Here's
good
my
job.
salad Halloween.
Yeah, good job, actors, on powering through that a little bit, because that might have been tough.
Yeah.
But,
sorry, Warren.
Oh no, I was just gonna say one shot I've always liked is where he's confronting Anthony Head, whatever the hell his character's name is, the headmaster or whatever, across the pool, and they kind of get close. It's further away and closer, but they're still divided by the pool. I think that's a really effective way to, especially while he's telling him, he's insulting him, calling him a lonely god, and all the rest of it. Like it just really works to sort of establish that emotionally. I thought,
it was really good.
Even in advance, and this is one of my notes. In advance of that, there's a bit where Finch walks into the school. The camera's at his feet. He clicks his heels. He turns.
Yeah.
Camera shoots up. The Doctor's up on one of the landings on the stairwell. And then the camera is up high looking down on Finch. And then they go and do the pool thing. And it just looks really good.
A lot of good overhead stuff.
You've got this whole like... because you bring up like the god thing, because you've got the Doctor up on high as though a god.
Oh yeah,
and then they meet up, pool where they're more equal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if that was actually written in, because the very first shot of the episode is Anthony Stewart Head essentially doing the same thing, sort of stop and then turning on his heels sort of thing, to talk to that girl who's in the hallway sitting in the chair. And you cut to the shot, basically it was kind of a POV of the girl looking up at him. And there's this big circular light above him, which is kind of like a halo. And someone actually commented in the commentary, I like that shot of the halo. And Toby Whithouse is the writer. It was actually on the commentary. It says, I think that was in the script. So he actually wrote that in. So
that's cool.
So good job on
though he's meant to be angelic, or
exactly as if to say I am a trusted teacher. I am an angel to you, small child in the school. You may trust me. And so I like kind of how then he is the one sort of, as you say, looking up at the heavenly doctor in comparison to what he is later on in the episode.
On that note, though. Why has the school not been shut down months ago? Like, they are the most obvious bad aliens in the world. They've got a giant barrel of goo with alien writing on it. Like, and this guy's dumb enough that he's like, oh, she's writing a profile of me. Why would you do that? Like, that seems like a very foolish thing to do if you're an alien hiding from humans.
Vain, though.
It's taken me 4 or 5 viewings of this to get to this point and realize that. So,
Still so vain.
There's a lot of utterly dreadful writing in this.
Massive, horrible,
I wouldn't go that
far. Okay, well, I wasn't trying to push it, take it to that pitch, our audience, but okay.
Yes. I mean, I'm gonna do the right thing and focus on Hawes for the most part, but there is some horrible ropey writing in this.
Wow. Well, I want to point out, we talked about ADR and the beach scenes in New Earth being pretty obvious because, of course, it was really windy. There are 2 bits of ADR in this episode, one obvious, one not quite so obvious. The obvious one, and David Tennant's in the commentary for this, and he says, like, oh, why do we have to ADR this? It's basically when Rose and Sarah meet for the first time, and they're walking down the hallway, and all of that's ADR'd. And you can tell it's not just like they don't quite hit. And I'm thinking it just might be technical reasons because they're walking down a hallway. The ceiling is right there. You don't have a chance to get a boom mic in there. Although I would suspect you could also, maybe get a shotgun or something.
You don't hear footsteps.
You don't hear footsteps. So that didn't work. But the scene by the pool, the much celebrated scene by the pool, is also all ADR because all the water and stuff and all the sounds of what the pool is.
And
but that one is an echo, and you barely notice. Because they managed to get those performances in.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, though. It's down to the emotion, the performance, the tension, things like that. Where I think you're just more invested in what's going on in that scene than a walk and talk down a hallway.
Yeah.
Also, I never really bought the rivalry between Sarah Jane and Rose. It just seems a little forced. You know what I mean?
A little bit.
I don't. I think I do.
Yeah.
Especially the whole bit where Rose is just reveling in Sarah Jane Smith's name never having been brought up.
Yeah. Never mentioned.
I say all this.
Yeah.
I say all this, and I was still choked up at various points in this whole story.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But the what I mean, going back to how TV was made back in those days, and there's the first proper sit down scene between the Doctor and Sarah Jane when the Doctor they're in the cafe, Mickey and Rose are eating chips. The Doctor's sort of working on K9, and Sarah's sort of like they're catching up, seeing what's been going on and everything. Watch that scene again, and there are so many cuts between Sarah, boom, Doctor Sarah, boom, boom. Reaction, boom, boom, boom. And I just thought that's another thing that probably would be done a lot different today, a lot more filmic, and that they would probably, I think, would be much more effective to just have it as like a 2-shot. So you could see, that maybe have a slow push in or something like that on what's been going on, or maybe a slow pull out or something like that. So you could see the reactions of each character instead of having to cut to each reaction. I think it would be a much the story. I think that scene would feel a lot more monumental than just a really quick dialogue scene, which is kind of how it was edited together.
Think of, was it Resolution, the scene in the cafe with Ryan and his father?
Yeah.
Yeah, like how that compares to this,
right?
Like it's a world apart.
It is. I mean, that's slightly because that one's written sort of like Ryan's talking a lot. And then his dad is talking a lot. They each sort of have like kind of, monologues a little bit. This one's a little more back and forth, but I think that you could have, they didn't even really establish like, a 2-shot to begin with. They're sort of like just sort of tucked in that corner. And maybe this is once again down to space and they didn't have the room to have a camera further back, In
any 2-shot you might have is going to be K9 and one of the others.
Yeah. You have to work around K9 because he is kind of a brick.
Once again,
in terms of shooting.
Yeah, that damn dog ruins shots again.
For the cafe scene, I just want to throw out massive kudos to whoever decided to play Joy Division's Love Will Tear Us Apart.
I'm sure that was probably in the script too, I'll wager, from Toby Whithouse. He of dreadful writing fame, apparently. But
well, in this episode, yeah.
I think we more or less covered a lot of the stuff for this one. But the one thing that I liked is that Hawes said to Tennant when the scene where Rose and Sarah Jane are sort of like having a one-upmanship with the I met the Loch Ness Monster, seriously. And then they finally bond together a little bit, and then the Doctor comes in while they're laughing about him, completely breaking the Bechdel
that part's
test.
great.
It's great. Well, and Hawes wanted a natural laughing reaction out of them, so he told Tennant, put on like a silly mustache or something. So like Tennant goes to his makeup chair and has, unbeknownst to Billy Piper and Elizabeth Sladen, and has this big giant fake mustache painted on him, so that when they turn to watch him, because he's not on camera, that laugh you get is a natural reaction to him looking ridiculous for that scene. So kudos to Hawes for doing the nice way of getting a natural reaction, and not like William Friedkin firing off a revolver behind Ellen Burstyn during the making of The Exorcist in 1973. Anyway. Maybe we should do a Miniscope on William Friedkin at some point, but no, we probably won't.
As we hit the hour mark of the Miniscope here, I've got a couple last points that I'll skim through here, and we'll wrap this up shortly here.
Sure thing.
One of them is when Kenny is straggling behind. I guess would be right after Mickey ramrods the school.
Right.
There's a shot where he's like down the hallway, and Mr. Wagner so you see Kenny through the door frame down the hallway, and Mr. Wagner shuts the door, and there's a window in the door, and Kenny doesn't move, but you still see him through the doorway, through the window in the door, which I just like the blocking. It just looks nice. And not Hawes, but just kudos to David Tennant for being a really, really good actor, because Tennant sells some absolutely ropey situations and dialogue, like the Ethernet switch being deadlock sealed, and he can't get into it with a sonic screwdriver,
right?
Despite the clearly visible screws on the side of it.
Listen, this is the glory years of CRTs. I was just sitting there going, look at these terrible clunker computers. I love it.
Oh, there's some, kudos to Hawes, because like a scene where a bunch of kids are typing emotionlessly at a very fast rate, make a scene out of that and make it look dramatic, because it's like they're just a bunch of kids basically just data entry, and the music's really going. Yeah.
Make it look dramatic when the stuff on the screen is identical before and after they start typing. Nothing changes.
Nothing changes that whole scene.
Or
it's kind of
or when Mickey pulls the plug, and you have like 30 computers and monitors and everything else tied to one outlet. That doesn't get overloaded.
I don't know. I went to Nate, which is the technical college in Edmonton, and it's not far off.
No,
at the time.
Yeah, whoever did the wiring in that classroom should be shot.
Wow.
So we got bad wiring, bad writing.
Yeah,
bad cable.
This whole thing's a disaster. You're like the Mike Holmes of Doctor Who episodes.
Bad cable running. And then last thing I had on my list was there's a shot of Finch from up above on a stairwell landing as he kind of like screams or whatever for other Krillitanes, and then it cuts to like kind of a long shot of a hallway where a few of the teachers kind of like line up in a offset staggered pattern, and the hallway is off to the side of the frame. And then they kind of it just looks nice, and they kind of change from human form to Krillitane form. Yeah, and then they just cross the frame from right to left.
I remember that.
Exit the frame.
Yeah,
it's just really set up really, really nicely.
Yeah, nice choreograph. You almost could tell they were maybe about to enter into a dance off. Maybe at some point the Krillitane sort of like absorbed, I don't know, West Side Story or something like that, and they're all like, let's do a dance off.
Somebody just had to drop a beat.
I suppose so. That last scene was lovely, though, wasn't it? My word, I choked up again when I saw Goodbye, My Sarah Jane, and it's Kate.
I absolutely did too.
Yeah.
To try to, and I have a feeling this probably was an R2D rewrite, but to try to redeem, the writing a little bit for Woodhouse. I like drawing the comparison about K9 getting rebuilt to the Doctor, finding new people and moving on.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that was an RTD rewrite. So because Toby Woodhouse, Toby Woodhouse originally had the dog die.
Please tell me Toby Woodhouse has worked past this person that we're giving him right now.
Yeah. We did a Miniscope on him earlier. So
no, but I mean past Doctor Who.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he has. Probably.
Yeah, I mean Life on Mars is pretty good.
There we go.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anyway,
so was Ashes to Ashes.
I think, you know what? I mean, wrapping up, unless anyone else has any more to say, as Chris is saying,
I think Chris covered pretty much everything I was going to say.
Yeah, we're into the 60-minute mark here. I'm not necessarily impressed by James Hawes' work back then, but I think because TV in itself was kind of just in a non-impressive way back in those days in comparison to what we have today, which is fascinating. How I would give something, I wouldn't say I give something from the Sandbaggers more slack, but because that's also,
of course you do.
I
Come
do.
on, of course you do.
But it is also a much different time, and it's so odd to think of 2005 being a vastly different time for TV compared to where we are now in 2022.
But also different from the 70s and 80s. Like, it is its own thing.
It really is. Time has supremely moved on from even the first year of modern, or first and second years of modern Who.
Of the three we looked at today, especially, it's weird because with School Reunion getting moved up, presumably his lead time, his time to, his prep time, all that kind of stuff was probably cut shorter than he might have had for like Christmas Invasion.
Yeah.
Especially with Christmas Invasion being, a 61-minute episode. I thought he did the best with School Reunion versus the other two.
I thought so too. Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe just the pressure of all that, maybe just kind of, because some people work better under pressure.
Maybe, and maybe just certain episodes set themselves up to have more, like the confrontation scene in School Reunion is perhaps a little more impressive than the confrontation scene in the Christmas Invasion, for instance.
Or maybe Toby Woodhouse wrote a lot more direction into his script than RTD wrote into his.
That could be it too.
Who knows?
So you know what? Because of that, even though I'm not that impressed with James Hawes' work, no offense, but TV is like that, I'd be intrigued. Given that James Hawes has gone on to have a quite impressive directing career in mostly British television. It's rare that we have such a long gap between directors on Doctor Who, and I think I would be kind of intrigued to see what James Hawes would do now in a scenario, the way that TV is sort of made now. Sort of remove him from the trappings of all this. I don't know if he was at fault for the massive schedule conflicts and chaos that was happening in this first production block or not, or if he was just a victim of those circumstances. But I think I'd be intrigued to see what else he does now. Given
he did a few episodes of Snowpiercer, kind of some Canadian TV too.
Well, how about that?
Shot in Vancouver?
Canadian-ish.
Yeah.
Canadian-ish. That was shot in Vancouver.
Co-starring Ichi
the fine Canadian tradition of claiming it for our own when it isn't.
Yeah. So there, that's the verdict, I guess, such as it is. So we're down to what? What are we down to? 14 victims in the Miniscope.
14 in the Miniscope, 3 writers, 11 directors.
Oh, wow. Well, this is the time of the podcast where we actually get to choose the next one. So, Chris, obviously you have the Miniscope open. Otherwise, you wouldn't have known to comment. All right. Then begin the spinning of it now. Yeah. Very excited. I mean, most of it's amazing how there are some heavy hitters, the classic series, that are still on.
All the writers are all classic.
Yeah. There's a couple directors on there, I think.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of the directors. So 7 of the 11 directors are new series.
Yeah,
so
and like all of Flux is now represented on there because of three episodes each. I know. Well, let's see what we got. That's enough banter. Chris, stop.
We're going to go down under for some Lenny Mayne.
Lenny Mayne. Oh, how about that?
Lovely Pertwee stuff here.
There's some Pertwee stuff with the Three Doctors. What else did he do? He did anything with Rex Robinson. Didn't he do Curse of Peladon, right? Yeah, Peladons.
Yeah.
Oh no, he did the Peladons.
I just remember Katie Manning always speaking well of him.
That's true. And then, of course, the Hand of Fear, and then he died, sadly, in a boating accident. So there we go. Lenny Mayne. There's a great documentary on the Season 14 box set called Looking for Lenny, which I imagine we'll probably watch.
I'd like to watch that rather than The Hand of Fear. But
yeah, I know. We didn't think too kindly of The Hand of Fear. We did a commentary for it.
It's got its moments, but it really does go on and on.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, we don't have to worry about the writing. We'll worry about the direction when it comes to Lenny Mayne.
I'm still going to watch it. So
that's good point. Good point. All right, Lenny Mayne, director. That's your homework, kids, for the next time that the Miniscope resumes here on Radio Free Skaro. But until next time, I am Stephen in Edmonton.
Warren in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
So long for now.
You've been listening to Radio Free Skaro. Find us online at radiofreeskaro.com. Follow us on Twitter and Tumblr at Radio Free Skaro. Subscribe to us on iTunes and donate to the show at patreon.com/Radio Free Skaro. Thank you.